Righty, Bruce Cameron, we're here in front of your Thornycroft carrier. Tell me a little bit about this one.
Well, it's got quite a unique history really. It was one of 6 that came into New Zealand in 1939, just before the start of the war. And in those days it was the bee's knees of armoured tracked vehicles. It was one of the first armoured tracked vehicles that the New Zealand Army had. And they transported them all around New Zealand, and the other Thornycroft that the Wairarapa Museum is an exact sister to this one. And they still carried their English road registration numbers underneath. Well, this one is HMH 243, and they were a model that the British produced before the war in their hundreds, and they went to either the Middle East or to France, and there were 2,000 carriers left behind at Dunkirk, and the majority of them were of this class. They were obsolete or out of date within a year, because this is actually the true Bren Gun Carrier. The next one was the Universal Carrier, and it went on from there. And New Zealand built the LP2s and such like. It is this one now is the only privately owned one in the world, and that label there is the only one that exists. Yeah.
So how long have you had this one?
I've had it, well, my brother and I had our eye on it 42 years ago, and from the farm that it was on in Pigeon Bay, it went to a friend of ours, and that's where we spotted it. And, we wanted to buy it off him, but he said no, we want to use it for access to a gold mine on the west coast. So it was transported over there, but while it was sitting on the beach at Ross, somebody stole the fuel tanks out of it, and they put a 4-gallon tin in there to 4-gallon tin to fuel supply. And what happened, bumping, banging around, it fell over and caught the exhaust, caught fire and went over a bank, and they just left it there. And we contacted the owner again, and he said, oh well, he says, $450, it's yours. So my brother went over, put the tracks back on, and we dragged it out. But it's been a slow process for a long time, because we had no idea that, looking at it originally, it never looked like any of the other carriers. We knew it was something really different about it, but I quietly put it back together as best I could. It was a wee bit like a Lego. It was the only way you could attack it. But the camouflage that's on it, the New Zealand Army put it on with a paintbrush in the first 6 months, and it was to copy a lot of what was on the English carriers.
So how long have you had it?
Yeah, well, it was 40 years ago that we managed to purchase it.
Oh, that's when you first got it? So,
yeah,
right,
okay.
Yeah.
And it basically was bought at that time, because there was none of this restoration type thing going on those days. My father had wheeled and dealed in military stuff for a long time. We had all sorts of vehicles that were broken into farm life, which there wasn't a lot of things around. A lot of these carriers that are here had served time on farms. But yeah, we decided to try and turn it back to something that it was, and this is what we have.
So when these first came into New Zealand, what were they used for, do you know?
Well, to train the original troops of the NZEF. Charlie Upham may have even trained on this one. And the A8 on the side here is the first number that we know that it had at that time, but just slightly before that, it had they all had Roman numerals for the 6, and this was number 5 of the. It's quite interesting that there's two have survived, and they're the only 2 left in the world.
Yeah, it's quite impressive. Just having a look around this weekend, while there's 30 odd carriers here, have you had a count up at all to see how many variants? Obviously there's quite a few LP2As, LP2s.
Well, it
You've
looks
got one
as though
of the
there's
unique-
variants of all sorts. I've just been talking to another owner over there, and there's Canadian stuff mixed with English stuff and such like, but the majority of us here have been produced by General Motors in Wellington. It was the Australian design. I think that's why we've got so many, is that there were a lot of them here at the end of the war, because we had 22,000 vehicles at the end of the war. And
Realise we had quite that many.
yeah, and the likes of the old GMCs, of course, ended up doing a lot of farm work, logging and all these sort of things here. But a lot of these were used for knocking down scrub. And this particular one, when it was stripped down, the old farmer used it for carting out fencing material and spraying equipment on the hill. It would have been ideal for that those times. But,
all right, Bruce, thank you very much.
Thank you.